Feminine energy is ageless. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I want to talk about a topic that I feel very passionate about, and that is feminine energy and aging. If you don't know what I mean by masculine and feminine energies, I have a ton of videos on this topic, so I'm not going to dig into the specifics of those in this video. But I want to talk about the concept of feminine energy throughout a woman's life. First, I want to start off by saying I'm a 42-year-old woman, so I understand that I am probably biased. As I've thought back on my life, I've realized that I can't remember a time in history where I haven't felt like I was too old as a woman. You know, I've never felt like there was, I mean, even in my youth, even as a kid, it was always like, well, if somebody's younger, that must somehow equal better or something. There's always been this obsession with youth, and it's something that I've experienced because I think we put that out there in the media and specifically in our culture. Speaking of, you know, I'm in America, in this culture and probably other cultures similar to ours, we put this extreme emphasis, specifically with women, on youth, as if youth is the best thing that a woman can have and that it's her only asset. You know, at 22, I thought that I was too old to settle down or too old to do this. Like I've always felt this, and I'm sure I'm probably not the only woman who has felt, because of our obsession with society, it's like, okay, well, I'm 25. I mean, I've seen these women who are like 25 and going through a quarter life crisis, or these women who, plastic surgeries and, you know, Botox injections from women are getting younger, and yet there's girls who are doing it when they haven't even turned 18 yet. This obsession with youth in our culture has kind of set up this idea that in order to be a traditional feminine woman, or in order to be wife material, or, you know, dating material, or, you know, a high value woman, that it has to include being youthful. Now, I could put on my little conspiracy theory hat here for a second and say that I believe a lot of that is to suppress women's feminine energy, because most women don't truly tap into the full extent of their feminine power until they get past a certain age, and that age is up there. You know, most women are not fully tapped into their feminine energy in their 20s. Some of that is the pressure that we put on young women to be masculine achievers in the world today. If you think about it, age is something you really can't control. Now look, I'm not at all saying that women can't be healthy and take care of themselves, that you know, I think people in general should be really actively leading a healthy lifestyle and taking active care of their health, taking an active role in really taking care of themselves the best way possible. Your age is still how long you've lived, and you can't really change how long you've lived, right? So having this obsession with youth, where no matter what age a woman is, she constantly has to be obsessed with looking or feeling younger, it's gonna keep a woman in a constant state of insecurity, a constant state of trying to buy products or buy services that constantly keep her looking younger, to start using a lot of chemicals or get caught up in different diets. I mean, there's a lot of industries out there. There are billion-dollar industries. I can think of three off the top of my head, $3 billion industries, that being the diet industry, and I'm not talking about being anti-healthy eating, I'm talking about like the diet industry. There's a difference. The fashion industry and the beauty industry. Billion-dollar industries. If every woman on the planet basically said, no, I'm going to be happy with who I am the way I am right now, those industries would collapse. There's too much power and money caught up in those industries that are solely based on making women feel bad about themselves. Not dismissing that there isn't pressure on men. The obsession and the pressures on women are so strong. Just convincing women that they're not good enough and that they need to spend money and support these billion-dollar industries in order to be youthful. We also have to kind of convince men, right, that women are better when they're younger. And so I believe that men have been manipulated into believing that younger women are always better. And we do that through media in the same way they manipulate women into believing that. I mean, that's mainstream, but you know, the fact that we introduce porn to men younger and younger, and I actually talk about this more in my porn and body image video, is, you know, we introduce men younger and younger to porn, and the women in porn, who you hope are of legal age, but who knows, but a lot of them are designed to look not legal and youthful and younger, and we show men these women that are younger and younger, or, you know, have this more youthful appearance as being sexually turned on all the time. Eventually men are just going to associate youth with sexual attractiveness. And I know that there is a primal part to this, and there are going to be men out there that are going to argue that it's a primal thing and that's whatever. There's aspects to our primal urges and our primal needs that do affect our everyday life. However, we're also not animals. We have some control over our primal urges. We all use toilets, right? We're not just peeing in the woods, right? So there's a level of primal aspects that we're drawn to, and there's also a level of choosing a life that best suits the life that we're trying to lead. And those things might be different. And in reality, the primal urge that men have, that they obsess over when it comes to this women and youth, is this primal need to mate with a woman who's fertile, to have as many babies as possible. Evolutionary thing. However, a lot of studies show that women over a certain age, and I know that the mainstream media does not want you to think about this, they don't want you to hear about this, but that women's fertility, if a woman is healthy and a woman is taking care of herself and actually has a natural fertility cycle, a woman's fertility is not that much different when she's ovulating, when she's 25 or when she's 35 or when she's 45, if she's still ovulating and having an ovulation cycle, if she's taking care of herself and she is actually ovulating. So in reality, that fertility argument does not exactly hold a lot of weight. If as a man, you are interested in having the most number of babies that you possibly can have, starting young, you yourself being young, and starting with a woman who's young, probably makes a certain amount of sense. If that's not your main goal in life, is to have the most number of babies as possible, which for most people in today's society, that's not their main goal, then needing a woman to be as young as possible because of the fertility argument, not exactly the best argument. And you know what? Women and pregnancy and fertility is like a whole other topic I'm not really going to get too deep into in this video, especially because scientifically it's not my wheelhouse. But I also think that we need to stop convincing women that, like, oh, if you don't have a baby by the time you're 22 or something, like, that your chances are over. I've seen that online a lot, and I think that that's actually really destructive, is this idea that, like, if women don't have babies as young as they possibly can, then their window is done. And I think that's something that the medical industry tries to convince you of, and the medical industry makes a ton of money on fertility. And I mean, look, I could dig down the rabbit hole of what I feel like about what society and the people in power are doing with women and men and fertility. I could dig into that. That's a whole other rabbit hole I'm not even gonna go down right now, because we could be here all day, and that's a whole other thing. And I also want to say, when I talk about, like, you know, men and this obsession with women being youthful, I just want to state, look, I'm not here to convince any men who want younger women to want older women. If that's, you know, if that's your thing, if that's what you want, that's fine. I'm not here to convince anybody to want something that they don't want. I do always want to convince people when it comes to the things that you're looking for in a partner, to always ask yourself what it is that you really want in a partner, and does this desire that I want in a partner actually serve my deeper need? Because we always have a deeper need in a relationship. Anytime we say that we want something in a relationship with a partner, and we want something, some standard or criteria or something, there's always a deeper need that we're trying to fulfill. And asking yourself, does this standard or this desire or this need actually serve my purpose, serve my goal? The thing that concerns me is when you start seeing really, really large age gaps, and this assumption. I've heard this a lot, and I really think this is just such a toxic mentality, and I unfortunately hear too many men saying this, and I think that they're repeating a lot of things that I think we could get into some of the bad male role models that are in society, but I think this is sort of a mentality that gets taught to men who are attempting to teach men how to be alpha or high value, and I use air quotes because I don't actually think that these things are really the embodiment of what it means to be a high value man or what it means to be alpha. I think these are things that men are teaching other men how to be in their ego, or how to kind of support their ego and not necessarily their soul. I'm not saying that all male leadership is bad. There are some great men out there who are giving great advice to men, but I do think that there's kind of this toxic mentality that I'm seeing pushed on men, and I'm hearing a lot of men repeat this, is this concept that men's value increases as they age and women's value decreases as they age. So as a man, you become a more high value man the older that you get and the more successful that you get. And as a woman, your value decreases because youth is the only thing that matters in a woman. So if a man stays single until he's like in his 40s, he can just go date a 20-year-old and then bing, bang, boom, everybody's got value, right? Gotta be honest, as a 42-year-old woman, I take offense to that, and I really don't love it when guys say that to me. I'm like, okay, so I'm old news to you, so why are we having this conversation? But anyway, I think that's dangerous. For one, there are a lot of men who get older and never increase value. Men can increase value as they get older, but age does not define their value, right? I mean, I know a lot of men who get up there in age, their 40s, their 50s, or 60s, or 70s. They're not offering value to anyone. So just a man aging does not increase his value. It is true that many men don't step into their full potential and find their true purpose until later in life. Many people believe that it's after 40. That is true. That's not a guarantee. So a man's value is not dependent on his age. He has to do something in order to increase his value. It's not like, hey, let me just sit around and get old and then I can just date young women and then everything's cool, right? So men's value isn't solely dependent on age. So women's value isn't solely dependent on age either. There are a lot of women who in younger years are just not going to be set up to deal with a high value man. They're still working through their own stuff. They're working through their own maturity. They're working through this. I actually think most women actually need to grow into their own, to grow into their maturity, to grow into their true queen energy in order to be a true partner for a high value man, if that's the dynamic we're going with. I don't love the high value term, but like that's the term that people use, so I'm kind of going with it. So the concept that a woman's value is only in her youth is really just as ridiculous as the fact that a man's value would naturally increase with his age, right? It's not a guarantee. I actually saw this piece of advice. This really it bugged me. At first it kind of triggered me, but I kind of realized what this guy was getting at. It was a piece of advice where this guy was basically like why men shouldn't date older women. And I thought initially that he was just telling men like to never date a woman who was over a certain age. What I think he was getting at more was he was advising men out of dating women who are much older than them. And I will admit that in general, I don't necessarily think that big age gaps are really healthy going in either direction. I just think in general, people are better suited to match up with people who are within a certain age range of their own age, right? But the point that this man was making was that a woman who is older is going to be more established in her career. She's going to be a stronger woman, and she's not going to be as likely to be able to be submissive with a man. That she's not going to be able to submit to his leadership, that she's not going to be able to be receptive to his direction because she's going to have her own direction. And I get what he's saying with that. However, you could also make the alternative argument that a younger woman is going to be caught up in a lot of what society is telling women they need to be, caught up in the ideas of some of these feminist ideas of, women needing to be a career woman, of women not valuing motherhood. Younger women can more easily get caught up in that because that stuff gets put on women younger and younger, and that stuff is taught in schools. That's just the way that society is teaching young girls. And that a woman who is older, and age is relative, right? But a woman who's older could very well have maybe been through that life and realized that focusing on a career, not prioritizing family, rejecting her feminine energy is not what's been making her happy. And she may be more likely to actually want to drop into her feminine, to actually find a masculine partner who is a true leader, and actually even take on very traditional gender roles if that's what two people are looking for. So in that sense, age is kind of irrelevant, because yes, you could find younger women who want to be in their feminine energy, or you could find younger women who are still, fighting that masculine grind, or you could find older women who are like, hey, I'm established, I'm in charge, I'm the boss, or you could find older women who are, very much tired of that life, tired of the masculine grind, and wanting to sink into a more feminine way of life. So if you could find either one, that means age isn't really dependent. It really is dependent on the person and the individual, and it's a matter of saying, okay, this is what I want in a partner, and finding a partner who is going to suit that life. I would actually use the argument that a man who is obsessed with the idea of finding a much younger woman is coming from ego. It's an ego, it's a status thing. It's like, I landed this younger woman because it's a status thing. In the same way that I believe that, yes, it is biological that women tend to be attracted to men who are larger in size than they are, you know, taller, height. It's biological. But if you're a woman who's like really, really short and you will only date a man who's ridiculously tall, it's an ego thing. You don't need a man, like, you don't need a man who's, you know, it's like these girls who are like 5'2" and like, I'll only date a man who's 6'3", and it's just sort of like, well, if you'll only date a man because he's 6'3" or over, is that really because that's what your soul wants, or is that really just from ego? And in the same way, I think with men who get to be, you know, a certain age, 40s, 50s, whatever, and they start to say, well, I'm only going to date women in their 20s because it's this obsession with youth. It's like, well, okay, but is this woman really going to be a true partner for you, or are you just looking for somebody who's going to stroke your ego? And I think that's really important to point out, that, like, are you picking a partner from ego, or are you picking a partner from what your soul really desires? And if you're sitting there listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, this is just some 42-year-old woman that is bitter that men want to date younger women, well, yeah, probably. That's probably entirely true. However, I actually have a couple excerpts from books that I want to read that I think illustrate the point, and these are both books written by men talking about this topic. And they're both well-respected books. They're recommended often in circles that talk about high-value men. So if you don't believe me and you want to think that high-value men only go for youth and a woman, I think these are really good examples of times when that's not necessarily true. This first excerpt I'm going to read is from Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which is an iconic book. The pages of history are filled with records of great leaders whose achievements may be traced directly to the influence of women who aroused the creative facilities of their mind through the simulation of sex desire. Napoleon Bonaparte was one of these. When inspired by his first wife Josephine, he was irresistible and invincible. When his better judgment or reasoning facility prompted him to put Josephine aside, he began to decline. His defeat and St. Helena were not far distant. If good taste would permit, we might easily mention scores of well-known men who climbed to great heights of achievement under the stimulating influence of their wives, only to drop back to destruction after the money and power went to their heads and they put aside the old wife for a new one. Now, in this particular situation, we're talking about, you know, a man who has been with a woman who is likely his same age, who they've had a good relationship with, and then he gets to a certain point and he trades her in for somebody younger, which could probably be a whole other discussion in itself, right? Look, the studies show, the research shows, women are much more tuned into their sexuality and their sensual energy when they're older. Late 30s, early 40s is when most women really tap into the full source of their sexual energy. Men, it's usually when they're younger. So if we're talking about sex drive and we're talking about wanting a woman who's tuned into her sexuality, older women are probably going to be more work because they're going to be more tuned into and they're going to want deeper, more intense sexual experiences. However, that can be really good for men, especially men who are high achieving, because that sexual energy, and they talk about this actually in one of the chapters in this book, Think and Grow Rich, where they talk about a man's, you know, his drive and his, you know, his purpose and everything really being stimulated by his partner's sexuality, and, you know, particularly in having one partner and not be spending all of your time and energy fooling around with a bunch of different partners, which could be a whole other discussion video in itself. But I think that this is evident that having a woman who is more your equal in age and experience and maturity can actually help a man become much more successful in his life. And the other excerpt I want to read is from one of my favorite books, which is The Way of the Superior Man by David Deida. I actually love all of his books. And this is actually the chapter that is entitled, Allow Older Women Their Magic. And I think this is pretty evident of what I've been talking about. An older woman will also tolerate less of your bullshit than a younger woman. Although this might be one of your reasons for preferring younger women, you must choose your priority. If you find yourself attracted to younger women, be careful that you aren't trying to find an easy relationship with a woman who will let you slide. If your purpose is to become ever more free of your self-burdens and give your true gifts to the world, then a spiritually mature woman who won't let you slather in your comfy habits of security and distraction may be an excellent ally in your journey. Younger women are very often, not all the time, but very often much easier to manipulate, much easier to lead. And if you want to be a leader in a relationship, yeah, they can be easier to lead. However, and as I've talked about in other videos, a woman just blindly following a man because she doesn't know how to stand up for herself, because she doesn't know how to tune into her own body, because she doesn't know how to communicate with a man, not going to be a good relationship in the long run. She's very likely going to end up feeling abused. She's going to very likely feel manipulated. Can very much lead into her getting into her wounded feminine energy, which can lead to a lot of self-destructive habits, or it can lead to her getting into her masculine energy if she starts to really feel like she doesn't trust you anymore. You know, there's so many dynamics in that situation that can lead to unhealthy situations. And I'm not trying to dissuade, look, if you're somebody watching and you're an older man and you're with a younger woman and your relationship's great and whatever, that's fine. I'm not here to judge. I just would really love to stop telling men that women's value is all in their youth, and stop telling women or men that a man's value always increases with age. Men have to do things in order for that value to increase. It's not an inherent guaranteed thing. I think this obsession with men having to date women who are much younger is not necessarily healthy, and it's not necessarily going to serve anyone in the long run. And I understand that as women get older, a lot of times as women we get wounded. We spend a lot of time in our masculine energy because a lot of women, particularly my age, a little bit older, women who are younger, we get pushed into this masculine drive. We get pushed into this masculine life, into this masculine world, and a lot of us have suppressed our feminine energy. But any woman at any age can tap into that feminine energy and be a feminine woman at any point in her life. And I actually believe that, and many other cultures believe this, that women actually step into their true beauty and radiance as they age. You know, as they get older, as they really step into all the different flavors of their feminine energy, as they learn to let go of a lot of their sexual shame that gets put on them a lot in our society today, and they tap into their sensual energy, as they step into being nurturing mothers, as they step into their wise woman and tap into their intuition, as they step into that very regal queen energy of knowing your worth and of knowing how to lead with inspiration and create communities. All those things are things that women can step into. They very often, especially in our society today, women really have to learn how to step into those things. They have to, a lot of times, break through a lot of the noise that's around them and step into that. Our current society doesn't really nurture that in women. So I would just encourage people to stop associating youth with feminine energy, or assuming that a younger woman is always going to be better at being feminine or whatever. I don't love that term, but like, it's not a guarantee. And if you are a man who is obsessed with younger women, but you're constantly dating younger women and you're never satisfied, I would take a look at that if I were you. Maybe some stuff you need to work through in that situation. I'm not judging anybody for any of this stuff. We've all got things we got to work through. I just would like to see us stop associating femininity with youth, or assuming that women are of lesser value just because of their age, because a woman's value is not solely determined on her age. A woman's value is so much more than that. Oftentimes, age, wisdom, experience, all those things can actually make a woman even more radiant and step that much more into her feminine energy. And at the end of the day, it's that feminine energy that turns on a masculine partner. It's not her youthful skin. It's not her age that actually determines how much feminine energy. And in fact, most women start overflowing that feminine energy as they get older if they're willing to tap into it. So I could go on about this topic probably all day, and I could get really heated, but I'm not going to. So just some of my thoughts. If you have any other thoughts or additions that you'd like to add, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any other video topics you'd like me to talk about, let me know that too. If you're a woman and would like to connect with your feminine energy, I have an online course called Feminine Radiance. Details are in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.